Hey guys, before this story begins, make sure you hit the subscribe button because tonight's story isn't just about love. It's about the kind of love that feels exciting at first, but slowly turns into something dangerous. Now imagine this. It's midnight in New York City, rain falling on empty streets, neon lights reflecting on wet roads, and a lonely taxi driving through Manhattan. Inside that taxi sits a woman whose life is about to change forever. Because sometimes the most important person in your life is someone you meet for the very first time in the back seat of a taxi. But here's the problem. Not every love story begins with destiny. Some begin with dark secrets. And by the time you realize the truth, you're already too deep to escape. This is the story of a woman who thought she was just taking a late-night taxi ride. But that night, she unknowingly stepped into the most dangerous love story of her life. Everyone in New York thought Emma Collins had the perfect life. A high-paying career in Manhattan, a beautiful apartment overlooking the Hudson River, a life most people only dream about. But there was one secret she never told anyone. The man she loved the most was also the man slowly destroying her. And the strangest part? Emma wasn't naive. She was intelligent, successful, emotionally aware. She knew he was toxic, and yet she couldn't stop loving him. Because sometimes the most dangerous love stories aren't built on lies. They're built on emotions that feel impossible to escape. Emma Collins was 32, a corporate strategist working for a major consulting firm in Manhattan. Her colleagues described her as brilliant. Her friends described her as independent. And the truth was, Emma had spent most of her life being the strongest person in every room. She understood people. She understood patterns. She understood psychology better than most therapists. But understanding love was a completely different story. Every morning, she walked through the busy streets of New York City with a coffee in one hand and a phone in the other. Yellow taxis honking, subways roaring underground, thousands of strangers rushing towards somewhere important. New York was chaotic, but Emma liked chaos because chaos meant distraction, and distraction meant she didn't have to think about loneliness. At night, her apartment felt too quiet, too empty, too perfect. Success filled her bank account, but it didn't fill the silence. She met him on a rainy Thursday night in Soho. Emma had stayed late at work and decided to grab a drink at a quiet bar, just one glass of wine before heading home. The bar was dimly lit, jazz music floating through the air, rain tapping softly against the windows. That's when she noticed him. He was sitting alone at the corner of the bar, dark hair, sharp jawline, calm, confident posture. He wasn't trying to get attention, but somehow everyone noticed him. When Emma walked past, he looked up. Their eyes met for only a second, but something about his gaze felt intense. Not flirtatious, not desperate, just curious, as if he could already see through her. Minutes later, he walked over. "Mind if I sit here?" he asked casually. His voice was calm, confident. Emma smiled politely. "Sure." His name was Lucas Reed. He worked in film production, independent creative projects, unpredictable lifestyle, completely different from Emma's structured corporate world. They talked for hours about psychology, about ambition, about failure, about dreams people were too afraid to chase. Lucas had a way of speaking that made everything sound interesting. Even ordinary experiences felt meaningful when he described them, and Emma found herself laughing more than she had in months. When she finally checked the time, it was almost midnight. She laughed. "I should go." Lucas smiled slightly. "Yeah, but I'm glad you stayed." And when Emma walked out into the rainy New York night, she already knew something had changed. The first few weeks felt like a movie. Late-night walks through Central Park, coffee shops in Brooklyn, rooftop conversations overlooking the Manhattan skyline. Lucas was charming, but not in an obvious way. He didn't overwhelm her with compliments. He didn't try too hard. Instead, he created mystery. Some nights he would open up completely, talking about childhood memories, dreams he never told anyone, the films he wanted to create one day. And Emma would feel like she had discovered a hidden world inside him. But other nights, he became distant, quiet, hard to read, and strangely, that made her want him even more. Because humans don't chase certainty, they chase uncertainty, and Lucas was unpredictable. When he kissed her for the first time on a rooftop in Brooklyn, Emma felt something powerful, not just attraction, but emotional intensity, the kind that makes logic disappear. Sometimes they stayed awake until 3 a.m. talking about life. Other nights, they wandered through the glowing streets of Manhattan, streetlights reflecting on wet sidewalks, taxi lights flashing past, music drifting from late-night bars. Everything felt cinematic. Everything felt alive. And for the first time in years, Emma felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel: excitement, hope, possibility. But slowly, small cracks began to appear. Lucas would disappear for 2 days. No texts, no calls. Then suddenly return like nothing happened. Sorry, work got crazy. Sometimes he would shower Emma with attention, long emotional messages, late-night phone calls, deep conversations about the future, and then he would become emotionally distant again, cold, unreachable. Emma noticed the pattern. Her logical mind recognized it immediately: inconsistency. But emotionally, she explained it away. He's just busy. He's different. He's complicated. And Lucas always returned just in time before she could fully walk away. Months passed, and Emma slowly found herself thinking about Lucas more than she expected, not just when they were together, but constantly, at work, on the subway, before sleeping. Her emotions had become tied to his behavior. When he texted, her day felt brighter. When he disappeared, her mood collapsed. Without realizing it, Emma had entered a psychological cycle called emotional reinforcement, the same mechanism that makes people addicted to gambling. Unpredictable rewards create the strongest emotional attachment. Lucas didn't give her love consistently. He gave it randomly. And randomness is powerful because the brain keeps chasing the next moment of affection. Emma knew something was wrong. She could feel it. Every time Lucas canceled plans, every time he disappeared, every time he returned with perfect charm and apologies, her logical brain whispered, "This isn't healthy." But her emotions responded differently. They remembered the rooftop kisses, the late-night conversations, the way Lucas looked at her sometimes, like she was the most fascinating person in the world. And that conflict began to grow. Logic versus emotion, clarity versus hope. Because toxic relationships rarely begin with cruelty. They begin with intensity, and intensity feels like love. One night, everything became clearer. Emma was waiting at a restaurant in Manhattan. Lucas was already 40 minutes late. Her phone buzzed. A message. "Running late. Start without me." No apology, no explanation, just casual indifference. Something inside Emma cracked. When Lucas arrived, he acted completely relaxed, as if nothing had happened. Emma watched him carefully, and for the first time, she truly saw him. The charm, the confidence, the emotional distance. Lucas didn't mean to hurt people, but he also didn't take responsibility for their emotions. He loved attention, connection, intensity, but he avoided real emotional commitment. And Emma realized something painful. Lucas wasn't confused. He was simply unwilling to give what she needed. The breaking point came on a cold winter night. Emma had invited Lucas to an important work event. He promised he would come. She waited. Hours passed. People asked where her boyfriend was. She smiled politely. He's on his way. But deep down, she already knew. Lucas never arrived. Finally, her phone buzzed. A message. Sorry, something came up. That was it. In that moment, Emma felt something shift. Not anger, not sadness, but clarity. Because love should not feel like waiting. It should not feel like uncertainty. It should not feel like chasing someone who refuses to show up. For the first time since meeting Lucas, Emma chose herself. When he called later that night, she didn't answer. And when he texted the next day, she didn't respond. The silence felt painful, but it also felt powerful. Weeks passed. New York continued moving like it always does. Subways rushing, people chasing dreams. Life never pauses for heartbreak. Emma slowly rebuilt her emotional balance. She spent more time with friends. She started running again in Central Park. She allowed herself to sit quietly in her apartment without reaching for her phone. And one evening, she walked through Central Park alone, the same place she once walked with Lucas. But something felt different now, lighter, stronger, because she finally understood something important. The reason smart women sometimes fall for toxic men isn't because they are weak. It's because toxic people create emotional intensity. They trigger curiosity, excitement, uncertainty, sometimes even emotional addiction. But real love isn't built on emotional chaos. Real love feels stable, respectful, consistent. Emma looked at the skyline glowing in the distance, and for the first time in months, she felt peaceful because she finally understood the most important truth about love. True love doesn't confuse you, it doesn't disappear, and it doesn't make you question your worth. The right person will never make you feel like you're asking for too much when all you're asking for is honesty. And maybe that's the real lesson behind stories like Emma's. Sometimes the most important love story in your life is the one where you finally choose yourself.